They're involved in NAD. So today we invite him to this platform to talk about his experience and to share a few things with us. So I do want to welcome Fred and thank you for joining us. Fred, are you ready?
Yes. I'm here. Hello.
Thank you, Fred. How are you doing?
Good.
Great. Well, I'm very excited that you decided to bring your story to share with us today.
Yes, I want to talk about my story and how it led to where I'm at today. And also, I want to relate it to the Caribbean islands and the Caribbean people that will join and how things are founded with them. I want to discuss more about that and have a, dialogue and make sure that I show what has happened so far. I want to involve everyone.
Yes, you want to be involved. I totally agree. Okay, for sure. Well, I'm very excited. I once again want to thank you for your time and for being here. I'm going to go ahead and give you the mic so you can go ahead and begin your presentation for today.
All right. So let me go back. The first slide. Can you go back to the first slide? Our technical person, to the first slide. Sorry, so my topic is contribute, which really means to give. Or if there's a skill, you would go and you'll show people your skill. So I want you to look right now, the Caribbean or the Caribbean islands or the islands in general. Jamaica, for example. For a long time, there's been many performers there. A lot of performers have been there. You can see the pictures here on the side in the slides. And they host a Jamaican cultural competition, and mostly development commission, and mostly there would be hearing people, but there was some deaf people there from the deaf institutes in the Caribbeans, from different organizations. And there was the competition, for first and second and third. And Jamaica had skills to be at those places. So in my presentation, I'm going to explain a little bit about this because there has been Jamaican deaf performers. There's a lot of people that didn't want to lead, but there have been leaders in there. So the next slide, I will talk a little bit more about that. Next slide, please. You see here, there's already an article, a newspaper article explaining the deaf dancers. And of course, this is from a hearing perspective. They're looking down the deaf person, like a deaf person can dance, how, right? That's how they're viewing it. And this was the newspaper article regarding that. But it's still an achievement because now we could see that deaf people could follow the rhythm. And so, yes, we have to be patient in explaining and educating hearing people how deaf people can dance. That's the norm, right? But some people are very curious on how that works. And so in the next slide, we'll talk more about how deaf people can dance. So obviously, deaf people can count, right? And if there is a base that has a count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You see that rhythm? You could follow that with your body movements, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 by counting 5, 6, 7, 8, right? We're all dancing together, following this rhythm and following the count of eights. You see, this is just another example of me doing it. 6, 7, 8. It's very easy to count. Deaf people can follow that, right? That's obvious. And that's how we show the rhythm. That's how we follow the rhythm. There is some deaf individuals that are hard of hearing and they could hear a little bit of the bass or the beat and they can follow some of it, or they can just visualize and just see how people are moving from side to side and follow that same tempo. There's many different ways that deaf people could adapt and just dance to the music. They don't have to actually hear the music to follow it. You know, a lot of deaf people, they have to rehearse a lot of times to get it right on the bass, you know. And if you agree with me, please make sure you put in the chat if you are a person who is deaf and had to rehearse a lot for that, so we can discuss a little bit there if you want to. I want to see your faces, but I know I have the PowerPoint. It's kind of hard to see both, but you know, we can still learn from each other if you interact with us during the chat. All right, so we're showing this, the leadership that's needed in the field of dancing, theater, film. There's a lot of leadership that needs to be there. In the islands of the Caribbean, like Jamaica or Bahamas or Haiti, these different areas, these different islands. And if they want to develop something, they must have a deaf leader because deaf knows about the culture. The hearing person, it would be oppressing the community and the community will feel suppressed. And we don't want to be controlled by a hearing person or feel like a puppet that have to follow what a hearing person does. So we prefer a deaf person to build something for deaf dancers so the world can look at and the children can look up to and understand that, you know, in the future, in their future generation, they could follow that same steps and to build something. So we need more leadership in this field. So I noticed in the islands, a lot of the performers are not deaf. It's not enough deaf performers. Do you agree with me? Okay. So now I want to explain a little bit of the history in America, in American theater, and how Black, brown people developed different things. Because in history, you will see there's a lot of things there, and it's in the same thing in different countries or in the Caribbeans. So I wanted to show you that change, and hopefully you can change for the future. So I see a lot of the American ways, but I believe if we apply some of the things that I've seen, we can make a difference in the future. Okay, so I want to explain about in America, in American history, how theater developed, how the theaters developed. Before there was nothing, right? There was deaf institutes, and I want to say most of them were have a lot of white people, and they excluded the Black deaf people. Where, you know, during segregation there was two different schools, and the Black deaf people felt like they didn't have theater, but the white deaf people did. And so a lot of the Black deaf students, they just had it happen one day where they live on the street. Let me see. They not have a mother or father. They might be unfortunate. And as I think someone needs to come on, and they might not know the sign language. And so maybe their parents are hearing and they're like, oh, this boy is deaf. Let me go ahead and adopt this child and have them live with me. I want to help that child. If it was a Black boy, for example, that boy was 14 years old, very young, a young 14-year-old boy. So I have a picture on the next slide of who he looks like. So as you see here, this young actor that traveled, and he wasn't skilled at acting, but his facial expressions and his gesture and his body language, a lot of hearing people were very fascinated with that. And so they took him on tour to different places like Europe, to France, to Scotland, and different other places, in America as well, in New York, you know, where the Statue of Liberty is. All these different places, people were very fascinated, and they were just so happy that this deaf boy who was 14 years old had these beautiful facial expressions. So just imagine this boy is 14 years old and he's professional. He's a professional performer at age 14, and he went to America for that. So that meant that the different islands obviously have a lot of young children that can dance, that can act, that could sign stories in those schools or maybe at church, you know. But the deaf people still develop even if the hearing people have teared them down or looked down upon them. And so that's just to show that deaf can, you know, white parents did help the boy and they did recognize him at age 14. But I'm going to show a little bit more about this story of what he was doing in the next slide.
The interpreter should still be speaking right now. Is there a next slide? Okay, here we go. We're talking about the little boy who was an actor. Let's go back to the boy who was an actor, that slide. And then after that one, perfect, let's hold right there, perfect. Now, that little boy who was an actor, he was actually brought up, he was taken from a hearing family and all these hearing people were watching him. And that was a long time ago, 1972. It just recently was established, having a Black actor who was deaf, finally. Next slide, please. Now, this man here, his name is Robert Wilson. Now he saw that little boy and he decided to adopt him, and he took him to multiple theaters and kept him acting around different places. Now, it's really important to lead in the theater world. Leadership is extremely important, and that man took the initiative to make sure that that attention is on that boy so that he can continue his growth in acting. Doesn't matter if you're Black, brown people. A lot of people don't know this history of this little Black boy who was the first Black actor. Now, in the Jamaica, in the Bahamas, in the Caribbean islands, honestly, the first actor who this little boy was, it should be saved in the history books. Everyone should know about him. Now, I want to get into a little bit about the development of theater and specifically how it was established. So you had that little boy and the man decided to put him into theater, right? You thought, oh, okay, that's it. The boy's just gonna stay home, twiddle his little fingers and not do anything, not act, until the man decided to put him into the theater world. He had never done acting before, but he really didn't even want to become an actor in the beginning because he'd never thought about it before. But times went on and things started to change. And once the boy started to get into his rhythm, it just clicked. Now, there was this one white Jewish woman, that's the sign for Jewish, who was thinking, Black people and acting, and thinking about how they go together. She had never met the little boy, but she wanted that little boy to act. So the man who was who worked with the little boy said, okay, my son will go ahead and act with this white woman. So there was a crowd of people who came. There were Black actors, and they all decided to develop a script for that theater because they wanted a whole show to be produced. Now, the script was written by hearing people. And there weren't a whole lot of screenplay writers who were deaf. They were all hearing back then. So let's go on over to the next slide. So it was called The American Dream. It was an all-deaf theater cast, and that is history. 1972. People watched it, and oh my God, it was like the sun waking up in the morning. It was like, finally, we see this group of Black deaf people who are in the spotlight. This was the first time this had ever happened. And it was created by Debbie Sonstro. The spelling is on the next PowerPoint. That was the person who directed this entire thing. People were in awe at the theater. The signing, the stage, everything was just so clear. They had never seen something like this. Everyone was just flabbergasted, honestly. Now, the next year, something happened that was very interesting. We're going to get into that on the next slide. They posted about it. They published it in the newspaper, how such an amazing cast this theater has, all Black deaf people, and that the theater is going to be coming back for another season. Now, the name of this next season was called Ceremonies in Dark Old Men. It was really a short play. It wasn't a very long one, but a lot of people came. There were Black and brown performers, and it was also the same director, Debbie Sonstro, and there was another woman. There was a woman who was creating it. There were Black and brown performers. People were accepting of this theater company and how amazing and just fresh this whole company was, seeing the leadership in every single person on that stage. And this was 1973. So this is history that we're talking about. And this really helped shape our whole theater world today. You know, a lot of people go to school and go to college to become actors and writers and all of that. But back then, they didn't do that. There was people get PhDs and just go to school forever to try and become the top screenwriter or actor. But this is really what we need to be focusing on. This show really helped bring theater into the world of Black deaf people and brown deaf people. This was all the way back in 1973. Next slide, please. So now I want to get into the director. This is Debbie Sonstro. Next slide. Now, you remember I was saying that the script was actually written by a hearing person, and they had a woman who was a director. Now things have changed. Black deaf people have started trying to write scripts, but they weren't quite sure on how to do it. So they put a Black man in charge of creating the script, and he was going to create the story for the next play. And this Black man actually started signing stories so that the person who was the screenwriter was able to put down what the story is to create that play. So they would constantly be in meetings with him, trying to perfect the script. He would be telling these elaborate, beautiful stories, and the screenwriter, because back then they didn't go to college, they didn't know how to write, so they needed someone to put down the words for the script, but they wanted it to be a Black Death story. So that's how they were able to create this script from a Black deaf man, but written by a white person. And that script actually is saved in a library. Hearing people see that script and they're like, oh my God, that was a deaf person's story. They're absolutely in awe because they had no clue. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Next slide, please. I have more slides. It's much longer. There should be more.
Cami said, I think there is an issue. I think there's a technical issue, Cami is saying.
Okay, Fred is saying, let me check my email really quick.
So we're having technical issues. I'm waiting for Cheyenne to respond. One moment. So let me go ahead and text the tech person. Just give me one moment. I apologize. Thank you. Okay, so I'm not getting a response. So let's try to just go ahead and skip to this slide. One moment. Okay, so I believe there's 6 slides left. Fred, are you there? Can you see me?
Fred is saying now. So Cheyenne.
So she just got the slides.
There's another email people are coming in and then the interpreter just to discuss now.
Okay, yeah, we can go ahead and turn the video screens on if you want to do the discussion part.
You can put your screen on. Just
Is it just
that's all? Oh, that's fine. Okay, so now we're going to have a discussion about theater in different countries. So notice there's many Caribbean islands, variations, and people have performance experience to show people around the world, but they haven't seen that skill yet. So I'm curious why. You know, let's have that discussion. Cami, why do you think this is it? Are people afraid, or what do you think when it comes to theater, right? Deaf dancers, actors, deaf people have the skill, right?
Cami's saying yes. Yes.
Yes, Fred is saying they have it, but maybe they're afraid or they're shy to show the world. But why? You know, I'm just wondering about this.
I think in Hawaii, there's a lot of events, and I notice that a lot of people aren't interested in those events. So maybe that is what is the issue. Maybe that's the problem. I definitely think we need to try to get more people who are involved in the community to go to these events if they're interested, to have more events, but I'm not really sure what's going on.
Fred is saying, I understand. People have the passion, and that's good. No. Maybe they're shy, or, you know, I'm just curious. Norman, what do you think? Can you explain a little more about your experience seeing from your, you know, your community and your town, or do you have any experience with this idea? I'm just wondering.
this is my chance to speak before Norman gets his light situated, but I definitely agree. You know, they do have that skill within, but that to put it on display, you need a certain amount of support. And I don't think that there's enough support. And with like within oneself, they can, you know, have that ability, that feeling that they can, but then when it comes to being put on display, they get nervous, they get scared, they don't have enough support. So I think that might be one of the issues to begin with.
Fred is saying support is necessary, clearly, of course. So Norman, back to you. What were you saying? So your home, you do have one in your country, you have skillful people with.
Yes, I do, Norman saying.
To show their skills in your community?
Yeah, so my island is, I'm from Jamaica, and there's a lot of people here, you know, that are amazing, super skilled, have all of the talent in the world, but I don't see that they're motivated enough to get their skill out into the world to promote that. You know, there's a few organizations that have some resources, but not a whole lot of people take that up. So, you know, it really just depends on the person, who they are, what they need in life to be able to go through with something like this. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
Fred is saying yes.
Yes.
Yes, you can go ahead. Tell me about your experience, Tracy.
Hi, I'm Tracy. I have a show from Guyana that's once a week. We do this about 3 times. I also teach deaf theater. It's actually my first time, a little bit nervous, but I've been practicing for 3 months now, so I can get used to it. So we do drama, we do different stories, like children's stories, and we match it to make it easier to understand for the children involved. There are famous stories that we have, like, you know, plays with them, and we also relate to the life experiences of being deaf. So that's what I do.
Tracy, I noticed difference. You know, everyone has different skills, or maybe they don't find it interesting.
Different reasons.
Different reasons. Maybe they don't find it interesting. And some, maybe they're prioritized. They'll pick certain people and then other ones they'll disregard. Maybe some are afraid, others are encouraged. So that's a start in order to have this conversation, the bravery, and people will look up to them. And it's really interesting. You start a play, you say, come on, why don't we try this out? And they say, sure, they have that bravery and that passion. And the audience, they're white and they're just flawed when they see these actors. And it's just so interesting. And it's something different. The story's just engulfing and they're just curious. They record this and you can save it in history. And then next year they can use this and they can see it later in time. This can stay.
So deaf people definitely need one moment. So I've explained history in the past, and when it comes to the experiences that individuals in the Caribbean had, it's a lot similar. Oftentimes, when the need to express themselves or to rebel came about, they would sign it and then document it. And over time, that experience ended up getting better. And so I'm gonna go into a little bit detail about the history. Cheyenne, if you don't mind pulling up the slides, if they're available, and everyone turn off their cameras. I'm gonna go into detail about the history and where everything came from. Cheyenne, if you don't mind pulling up that slide that we just finished. One moment, I'm waiting for Cheyenne to come back. And if you could go to the next slide, please. The next one. Next one. Okay, go back. Perfect, that's the one. So I really encourage everyone here to just think about how this all started, whether it was in education or in a specific organization. I want to talk about how this all got established and where the support originated. So when it comes to dance companies in the Caribbean, specifically Jamaica, there is the funds to support something like that. And deaf people are able to be involved in that. We just have to have that push and the funds for that. In the past, NTD, which is a white theater company, they were established and it went well for them. However, Black and brown people were not involved. And let's go to the next slide. At that time, schools were segregated. Black students had their own schools and white students had their own schools. And so whenever individuals wanted to go watch a play, it typically would be a hearing play. Next slide. So this woman by the name of Anne Bancroft, she was the lead actress in a specific play. And Gallaudet University students, went and saw this play and realized, deaf people can act. And so word got around, people got together and started to think of ways to establish their own. And so they had the support, they had the community supporting them. And so they were able to do something like that. So when we think about back then where Black people started to rebel and the civil rights movement came about, this one individual decided to create plays from those experiences and it really took off. It was a hearing woman who wrote A Raisin in the Sun. This was a famous Broadway play that eventually went to television. And that was one of the first in history. However, there was no Black deaf representation. On to the next slide. And there was a play that was shown at Gallaudet University called Othello. And the main character was supposed to be a Black man. However, it ended up being a white man. Othello, interpreter correction. And so it got to the point where our community and individuals within the community started to discuss how characters should be represented, how they're supposed to be. And in this situation, they weren't. Move on to the next slide. So this man by the name of David Hayes established one of the first deaf theaters, and all the individuals who were involved are white. But much like NTD, they traveled to different schools and different towns. And in Texas, one Black man specifically saw one of their plays and immediately ran up to the person in charge, David, and said, I want to be involved in this. And he made the decision to finally allow a Black man to be involved because of the fact that he was assertive and he knew what he wanted and put himself out there. And I will be just explaining who this man is in the next slide. His name is Joseph Sparky. He was the first Black actor to be involved with SARPy, interpreter correction. And he was involved in several different productions throughout the 70s. And so as a result of that, they started increasing the amount of individuals of color within their productions. And, I remember being in high school and just being excited to see more Black people involved in theater, and it really took off. CJ Jones, I'm not quite sure if you're familiar with this individual, but he's currently in films now, but he's been acting in the field for quite some time and very well known for sharing stories, which eventually ended up becoming films. And he didn't have that fear. He didn't hold himself back because of that fear. And so he was a part of the production called The Three Musketeers. And all three of these individuals were, and this was put on in 1977. And a lot of Americans weren't aware of this. It didn't get any advertisement. So a lot of people did not know that this actually happened. And so this is something that happened in history that many of us were unaware of. And so this is them here. And they were one of the first individuals to be a part of NTD. And you know how oftentimes, theater productions win awards for the things that they put on? This was one of the first times that they won an award for this production. And this happened in 1977. And this is all due to Joseph. So in this photo, Joseph should have been the one to get the award. They weren't acknowledged, but they were the three main characters who should have been the ones to accept this reward. However, they did not get the opportunity to do that. Okay, so I've explained this. Let's move on to the next one. Next one. And so I explained a little bit about this before, about who was in the play. These were the cast members that were involved. And the irony behind this is that the people who spoke, who voiced for the deaf talent, they're called interpreters. Currently, they're called interpreters, but back then they were called readers. They did not label them as interpreters. And so instead of voicing what they were signing, they just read directly from the script. So could you imagine back then, like how they approached it? It wasn't exactly how we approach it now, but that's something that happened. And let's move on to the next one. Finally. And so as I explained before, a lot of people were upset. And so people would sign these stories and their experiences, and white people would document them. But finally, for the first time, Black deaf experiences were being documented. And it looked like the next slide that I'm about to present now. So this was a play here that was pretty much straight from deaf hands. I Didn't Hear That Color was the title of this play, and it is the first in history that addressed something like this. This was put on in the 1990s, which was about 30 years ago, which is pretty recent. And at the time, deaf people were unsure on how to, fight for their rights and go against what was oppressing them. And so during, civil rights, it's always been a struggle, but one specific woman decided to create a play out of this. One woman said, I want my story to be told. And so she expressed that through sign and created this play here, which took a lot of courage. And so this man here is the one who documented all of these experiences, Bob Daniels, who is also Jewish. which is so interesting to see. You know, I was wondering, like, I've always wondered why Jewish people wanted to help so much, and that's something that seemed to be common. And so when Black people started to create their own, unfortunately, it wasn't 100% just Black people. Of course, they had to have other people to support. However, eventually people started to complain that their stories weren't being told. An individual by the name of Michelle Banks, interpreter correction, decided that she wanted to set up something that represented her own culture. And she ended up setting up a school. A theater company, interpreter correction. And a lot of people were able to have access. Okay, so this is the person who set up the Onyx Theater.
Yeah, and so she said that she must teach and encourage and help. And that's what Michelle Banks' mission was. You see, this has been published in the article as well, how she developed this theater, how she went on tour. And it was very important that we document and save or preserve this history. Again, there's another publication right here. There was many publications. And we want to keep history. In order to do that, we have to find these documents and show them out to our community and to our deaf children and help them have a visual of what had happened in the past can also happen in the future. And also with TV, there's soul food. Actually, can we go back on the slide? Go back. Okay, cool, right here. All right. And so another TV show called Girlfriends, it was on TV. It was a one-woman show that traveled and went on tour. Wait a minute, hold on. Okay, so now, there you go, to the next slide. So before, during the segregation, when schools were separated, sign language was also different. So within the Black deaf signers, they were signing a little bit bigger with a larger space, while the white deaf signers were signing in smaller spaces. It was a little bit different. And so when schools became mainstream, or when schools had Black as well as white deaf people in the same place, integrated, Black American Sign Language wasn't being used. And so we need to preserve that language. And so when a lot of people assimilated to just using American Sign Language, they forgot about the Black American Sign Language. And so, you know, there's been presentations talking about that, and, you know, relating to islands languages is very important that that's always there. And, you know, it's good to be influenced by other languages, but it's very important to cherish the original language or your cultural language, no matter if it was in the Caribbean, Jamaica, Bahamas. We don't want anyone to take away that language. We need to preserve that language, you know, because even in America, there is some signs that have been lost, but we need to cherish the signs. And for example, the sign color. So like a colored person or a white person. Oh, so the sign, for the sign white, as you see here, it's from the chest to the face, describing a white person. Versus the sign, just the sign of the color white. So saying that, so So there's different dialects or different ways to interpret what a white person would, how a white person would be signed versus the color white.
Or even when it came to productions producing other signs. For example, when you're eating or chopping certain things, we would sign things differently. And so now when certain signs like cornbread, in the past, we used to sign it like this. But since there's been confusion on how to sign and different opinions, you know, and the reason why that sign came about is because the way we used to make cornbread, we used to flip it like it was a pancake. And so back then, during like slavery times, that's how they used to communicate, like, oh, this is a sign for cornbread. And that was something that we cherished. That's something that we wanted to hold on to. Now, when it comes to the word what's up, white people will sign it like this. However, Black people will be like, what's up? You know, what's up, with a lot of expression, very loud, very big, similar to, you know, a lot of islanders. You know, all of our signs are really big and has a lot of emotion behind it. And that's something that, you know, we value and we cherish in our language. Now, when it comes to the younger generation, like, for instance, like the rap hip hop culture, you know, it's very like, you know, like, what's up, what's good, that movement, that expression. There's a specific sign like chillin'. That sign is very English based. It has a lot of English influence. You know, this is the sign that we use for chilling, you know, like we cool, we calming down, we chilling. That's the sign that typically we'll use in the islands. So I hope that's clear, just the difference between American Sign Language and how it's impacted certain words. And when individuals document these words, oftentimes those who use American Sign Language would criticize and say, oh, this is the right way to do it. And so, you know, when it comes to interpreters learning how to sign, they'll be like, oh, this is the right way. And a lot of times, a lot of interpreters are, you know, white. And so if someone were to sign different, or let's say a little bit lazy or informal, then it would be different than what people would consider the norm. For example, like the slang word, or even like when it comes to music and just our culture in general, that's something that holds a lot of value. And I think a lot more people should be.
With the next slide, as we see here, Black deaf actors and actresses have skyrocketed in theater. They have taken the steps and they have been able to be recognized. They're not scared anymore. They are wanting to have support, and they have new ideas for more people to be fascinated about. So we're going to go to the next slide to speak more about that. So Shakespeare. Remember when I was explaining before about the white man in Othello? So right now, you can see here that there is a Black person in the role because they've been fighting for many years to have this role. So the director in this one is Hispanic, and they helped. There were a brown person that helped develop this play, and many people were fascinated about this. So it's very interesting. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so now we have Wawa. He has traveled all over. He has toured all over. He's now a rapper, and he has been going on. He has not have given up his passions in performing arts. So we're gonna go to the next slide. So me, I really wanted to challenge hearing people's ideology. I wanted to join a hearing play because I know that hearing people would probably look down at me and be like, you're in a hearing play. But then later, they start recognizing that deaf people can do anything. And I had to show them to not oppress, and I had to fight to show proof and show them that they were wrong, that, you know, deaf people can do anything. So the next slide. So Alexandra, she moved to New York by herself, and she developed so many different opportunities and traveled all around the world and went to different TV. She was a part of a Child of a Lesser God. The next slide. The theater award winning. There's a lot of deaf that have won, as you see here. The New York Best Actor Award, you see here. To the next slide. New York, so this is the group right here. Next slide. So in Broadway, huge theater, a lot of Black deaf were involved finally, and it increased to kind of lead to different things, which I'll show in the next slide. See here, this is the big play called The Big River. 2 Black deaf people were involved. And Alexandra was involved in this play as well. I'll show the pictures here, the people that were involved. They were involved in the play and they were not afraid. Let's go to the next one. The Spring Awakening in Broadway. It's a Broadway play. There was a deaf person involved, one deaf woman. And you can see here, Shachelle Edmonds, she was involved. She was the Black deaf actress. And also she performed at the Super Bowl. You know, America's favorite national anthem. She signed that song at the Super Bowl. And then again, Child of a Lesser God. We have this Black deaf girl who was also involved, because there were so many white actors involved, all very common, but we changed that. And with movies, the Marvel movie, they will also involve a Black deaf actress. It's because people support that and they gave money, and now it is skyrocketed to this now. As you see, that is the award, nominated award. So she went second place, but still, this is a huge accomplishment. We're not giving up. So that's the next slide. This is the director, a Black man who supported the girl and supporting the community. We need that. That man is named Kenny Leon. He was the director of A Child of a Lesser God. And then, yeah, that's pretty much the end of my slide. But as you see, we started with nothing. We started from the bottom. And we saw these white people controlling and dominating things. We complained. And then later we saw scripts being developed, theaters being developed that's involving deaf people. And so when it comes to Black deaf people, we have been involved, and that's how it's been. So now I want to explain a little bit. I want to show you 3 videos so you kind of get an idea how people experiences and how people succeed. Do you have those 3 videos, Cheyenne? They're 3 videos. They're 2 minutes each. I don't know if you have them, so we could show them. We can go ahead and start and show the audience those 3 videos.
That's Joseph Avery. Hello, everyone. I am the first Black deaf actor, is what the video is saying. So I was born in Louisiana. I went to a deaf school there. And it was a deaf school specifically for Negro people. It was when schools were segregated. Now they wanted us to really learn oralism in that school. But they actually also had a theater company there. And when it was the NTID Theater, National Theater for the Deaf, and they came and performed in front of my school, that was the first time I had seen everything. It was all white people. There was not one person of color on that stage. I mean, it was very strange trying to relate to them. You know, they kind of looked me up and down. They seemed very poised and very, you know, clear with their signing, but there was not one person of color on that stage. But I still decided that I wanted to join, so I joined in 1971. And we went to multiple different places. It was like a different world there. Now, we had a whole team of actors. It was really like a family there. I loved it. I had to keep bringing baggage and luggage because we were traveling all over the country. Honestly, my heart is with theater. I love it. I'd want to say later in the journey, a few more Black deaf people started getting recognized in the theater world. She's saying later you joined in TID, right? So Jimmy Turner, I'm going to be naming a few of the people who started joining later with me, is another person, Jimmy Turner. And CJ Jones. It was all three of us together. So we actually ended up traveling to Australia. And that was a very interesting experience. That's where I actually met my wife, Carol, in Australia. And now we've been together for 42 years now. Our 42nd anniversary is coming up. We have 2 children. The first one is Kenneth. And our baby, he's actually sitting over there in the corner. She's sitting over there in the corner. So it was just so interesting trying to teach them sign language and seeing how they are growing, not only as people, but as signers and just becoming more skilled. And now for 13 years, after 13 years, she's become an interpreter. I'm really proud of my daughter. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you, Dad. Now, that was Joseph. He was much older in this video, but he's a staple in our community, very successful, has an amazing history in our theater world, and he's a part of our culture. He's a huge staple in our culture. He's a dancer, and the next one is going to be a dancer. Let's go ahead and get into that video. All right, and we're ready for the last video that I'm ready to show you guys. Is the video ready?
Okay, you and you. How come you don't have a man, huh? Maybe what's up?
And the woman is Jade.
I'm like,
She's actually from Jamaica.
What? I mean, you not getting any?
And Lauren is an actress, and she has become big in films now.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's much safer.
I agree, but I love men. Okay? That firm ass. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, that chest so fine and ripple. Yeah. But I'm not looking either. Because I'm still getting over my breakup with that fool Xavier.
I can see that. What about you, Sarita? You dating anyone?
Well, yeah, I'm seeing someone.
So now you've seen all three of the videos. You have Jade, who's actually from Jamaica. And honestly, she's amazing. She's the one that's, talking. That was a long time ago. And now to see her today, she saved so much of that island flavor into her films. And she's creating so many films to cater to our Black deaf community. She's extremely important to our world. Very important. Now, people need to understand that culture is a strong motivator in our world, and we need to cherish it. It's very precious. It's one way that we all stick together in this world. Now, performing is very, very tiring. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears put into this field of ours, and those three just never gave up. They are pillars of our community, and we thank them. So now we're gonna go ahead and close on this. Do you guys have any questions about the videos or my presentation? But I just wanna let you guys know that you have to be leaders. You can't be afraid, you can't be nervous, you have to go out there, you have to be innovative. It's not as hard as in the past when we were coming up now. There's a lot more leniency for you guys, and we have space for new ideas, and new people to come up into our world, and we really want that to happen. We have to work together to make sure that our community is uplifted, and all of this is just, it's so important for us to support each other. So Cheyenne, thank you so much for showing those 3 videos. Thank you so much, and make sure to cherish our community and our work.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chassis rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place on which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out of the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleams of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silence, thou who has brought us thus far away, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in thy path, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy head, to our God, true to our native land.
Yes, that was amazing signing. Each individual person that was English, they used word for word, but signing the concept, it made a clear picture. So anyone you see the video is powerful, it's impactful. And hopefully people will remember and never forget. It's important to video and document these things. And this is the last one before we close. There was an interpreter error previously with Lift Every Voice and Sing. The overall concept was that the video was not signed in English word for word, but ASL helped bring a picture concept to that video. That video was just really a guide. And it just broke down the relationships with people and the camaraderie. People working together, people from different islands, and just showing their true colorful colors. It was just wonderful. So Leonid, he's gonna pop up and you can all just put on your screens if you want, and we can start the discussion if you have any questions before we close out. I'm just curious, do you have any questions? Or Leonid,
Leonid saying, yay. It was really powerful stories that were brought up. It's really important to expose the deaf community all these things and to not be afraid. We have to be able to let people look at us. Sometimes they may discriminate us, but at the end of the day, it helps them learn to understand that deaf can do anything. We need to make the step forward, because sometimes people don't know how to support. So we just start off by one step and people will follow and it'll just continue and it'll be very successful that way. So thank you so much, Fred, for that. Before I close out, does anyone have any questions for Fred before we end it out? Or any announcements or anything? Go ahead and let's do that right now for the last.
Fred is saying Christoph.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christoph Phillips. I am actually from Jamaica. I'm the third year in college and my major is dancing. I'm a little bit nervous, I'm sorry. I'm very excited to meet you. But I wanted to know, how do us in college sort of continue with this unity with the past and how we've basically gotten to where we are to get today and how we've become who we are in this dance world? How are we able to incorporate that sense of the past into our everyday studies? I constantly see many people very excited with dancing, but no one ever really thinks about looking to the past and paying homage to where we've been. We only focus on where we're going. And I guess I'm just wondering, how can we keep that tied into our world and basically how we can just come back together, back to our roots in a sense. So really, that's just my question. I want to be able to know how I can recruit more people as well into our world to get them to get the courage to come and represent our community with us on stage. I want to be able to have that resource for other deaf people to come up and join our situation. So what are your thoughts on that?
So Fred is saying, back in the day, it was the same with me. I was young and I was passionate and I was in a group. And then I moved from my home in Florida. And I moved to New York and I was learning and, studying there. And then I came back to my town and I was like, come on, guys, let's get this. But there were other people like, no, this is boring. I have friends and I want to party. And I was like, okay, fine, but what do I do now? Pick 1, 2, or 3 different things. There was about 4 of us that we worked together. And eventually, it started to grow and people saw this and they wanted to join because they saw the progress we had made. And then I said, sorry, this is a hearing organization. They funded and support. Hearing organizations, they receive more funding. But they were willing to have deaf people involved because people were starting to pay attention and then they were joining. And then it continued that way. So it is true. If people aren't interested, just let them go. because there's more young people, new generations, people graduating from high school with different dances, and they want to get involved and they want to join because they have that same drive and passion. And, it'll continue on that way. But people older, 20s, 30s, they forget how to be young. And it's okay to change. It's fine. It's okay. Change is progress.
So
when a mother gives birth to a child, and as they grow, eventually they have to move on and grow up and progress into their own way. So it's similar to with this. Over time, things change and young people come into play. Do you understand like what I'm trying to say? Okay.
Yes, thank you so much.
We have more people who are inspired and passionate and working together in the community.
Thank you. Is there any other questions Leonard is saying? Any other questions? Any other question? All right, go ahead. Okay, go ahead, James.
Go ahead.
Albert is saying, I'm trying to think of an actor. There's a man, I'm trying to think of his name. I can't think of the last name, but he's an actor, he's a man. And I've met him before.
Fred is saying yes. Yes, just recently it was established. It's something new. It's a new organization. VOCA, VOCA.
Yes, yes.
And the actors, they travel, but they've changed. They, started new, bringing new people, and their upper management changed and made some new arrangements. So it's not the same, but yes, to keep it exciting and fresh.
Got it.
Go
Thank
ahead,
you so much.
Thank you.
Go ahead, James.
And Jane?
All right.
Good evening, everyone. My name is James. I've been doing this for a while now, a few years or so, but I actually stopped acting for a little bit, but then I came back to it, and now I'm trying to figure out how to evolve my craft and just get better. Basically, I just want to be able to go back and be able to get back into the theater world. I'm not quite sure how to do that, though, to basically perfect my craft. There's not a whole lot of deaf dancers where I'm from. And really my goal is to be a deaf performer in theater. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out, first off, thank you for paving that way for us.
Understand, Fred speaking. I'm old. You're young. You have a lot to offer. And yes, I can dance still, of course. But the point still remains, the youth really leads. You learn and you work hard and you go forward. And I could still join, but the leaders, that's not me. To think that Fred is going to just go there, you're going to just wait for Fred to do things. That's not going to happen. You need to get other people involved, 3 or 4 people involved, and expand and work hard and work together with that. Like, for example, you'll be able to work with someone as a team and work together and expand. That's what the youth does. They lead. Leonard saying, yes, I agree. It's not about tapping us on the shoulder for help. It's about getting up on your own 2 feet and lead and have others follow. And I wanted to just add a short story to, I don't know if Fred remembers this, but I have to share this. I remember before I met Fred, it was a team called Wild Zappers, right? Is that the company that you used to be in? Yeah, Fred is saying yes. I saw the Wild Zappers at Gallaudet University. I was watching it and my mouth was open. I was just so shocked to see the energy, the acting, the dancing. It was just so much high energy, a lot of dancing. And I was just so shocked. And I remember I told Fred I want to join, but I'm in New York, but I'm willing to move to DC. And Fred was like, okay, let me see. And so, it's really about the commitments. And, the next year I seen him. And 1 year later, I definitely joined the theater. And Fred was like, you actually did. And I was like, yes, I am proving to you that I want to be involved and I'm committed. And from there, I started acting. So it's really amazing. I was able to travel, they were able to pay me and I didn't have to pay anyone. I was in flights. I went to California. I went to Arizona and different places. I went to New York again. It was just an amazing experience. I went to New Jersey. It was just an amazing experience. And I seen all the different creatives there too that motivated me and helped me. And it wasn't about, if I wasn't a good actor, I couldn't do it. That's not it. I could do it because someone would teach and lead. So it's all about joining and being committed to do that. So I want to say thank you so much, Fred, for those opportunities. And so now it's time for us to go back to our topic of Deaf Awareness Week. Sign language, exposing people, because there's a lot of people that don't understand some signs. They don't understand how to be involved in a production or a theater that has sign language, or how to sign poetry, or even how to do gestures, or seeing the benefits of losing sign language from a deaf community. And so there's different mentors, different guidance that are there. So, I would encourage everyone to know not to give up, and don't say the word can't. Don't think that you can't because you cannot hear. Don't have those excuses. You need to remember what Fred said. It starts with you first. You are the first stepping stone. You take that leap. You do that first step in order to succeed. So go ahead and do that. So I want all y'all to remember that, have that in the back of your head. And if you have any mistakes, you just learn from those mistakes and you just keep going and you learn again and you do it again. So, we all have to be involved. And Fred, do you have any remaining comments before we close out? And Fred is saying, you have hit it right on the nail. And I also want to say, remember that you can't be too young to dance. You can dance in college. You can dance as a professor. I remember when I was in college, my professor said, go ahead and take a dance class. And I was like, nah, I'm in basketball. I don't need to do that. And the teacher was like, no, go. He convinced me really hard to do it. And I was in the class and he was telling me there was no test and it's a free class. Why not take it? And I'll get an A, an easy A. So that's what was really exciting for me. So I joined that class, danced. I had so much fun and it was a good workout. And for back then I was very slim. I was an athlete, so dancing was perfect for me. And that teacher really fooled me. There was a test and I was like, it was a performance test though. And so the professor said it wasn't a written test, it's a performance test. And from then on, I fell in love and I never looked back. And I'm successful, So people will see the special gem or special skills inside of you. And don't let anyone stop you from shining that light to that. Like my grandma said, if other people are trying to trash your idea or your fantasy or your dream, never give up. Keep it in the forefront of your mind and continue to grow. Don't be lazy. Don't step back. Because if you think about slavery 400 years ago, and we look at now, we have different opportunities. We have the chance to be successful. We have the chance to grow. We are free. We have fought so many years and we've never given up, and we still have to continue that resistance and to never give up, because we are going to succeed. It's saying yes. And again, I want to repeat, keep that in the back of your head. That idea of dreaming, keep it going. Because if you fail, just do it again. And if you're thinking that you'll be a failure, ignore those thoughts. Just do it again. Start again. Go from the basics. Keep going. And for example, you're going to see all these. So, interpreter missed that, but I believe the concept was to keep on going, keep dreaming. But we're going to go ahead and let Christoph end this. Go ahead, Christoph.
So I just had a quick question for Fred. Fred, that's your sign name, right? Just wanted to make sure. So you're a teacher. You teach deaf people, right?
Fred is saying I teach both. Definitely.
Oh, in college? Oh, okay.
And I want to explain a little bit. This Fred. So that group, I believe, was that I was in Wild Zappers. It was many years. It's a new group now that people are very fascinated about, and it's still growing. It's really about preaching to never give up. And it's really to show Black deaf leaders. Doesn't matter if you're Black leaders in general, doesn't matter if you're deaf or hearing. So when the hearing looks at this, they'll look at deaf people and be amazed that deaf people can do all these things. And it's really about showing the hearing person that deaf can succeed, and to not look at deaf people any less than they would anyone else.
Oh, okay. So yeah, my experience is the same. I've had to deal with both deaf and hearing people. And there was always those folks who were like very surprised that I'm a teacher, even though I'm deaf. They're like, oh my God, you're deaf. How are you a teacher? But, just trying to, understand that they have those predetermined biases, and just not letting that oppression affect who I am, and just continuing to do what I love, which is teaching, and not letting that influence my actions. I have to show people that deaf they can do whatever hearing people can do. And when hearing people tried to impose their oppressions and prejudice on me, I have to sort of let it go. I have to just let it be, because I need to be that person, that leader in our community, to continue being that representation for deaf kids when they see a deaf teacher. I don't allow hearing people to judge my path, because we are completely different culturally. When it comes to deaf culture, they know that deaf people can do whatever we want. So when hearing people try to, get surprised by what I do, I can't let it define me.
And Fred is agreeing. And Leonard is going, the time has ran out already. We have already passed the time. So now I'm going to go ahead and start to close. I want to say continue to support this organization and this event. Thank you all for participating and being involved and watching so far since this whole week. And, September is about to end soon. So it's really important. I want to say thank you so much, interpreters. If you can put your cameras on and say hi. Because we could not do this without you. Thank you so much, interpreters. And we cannot do this without them. So hands up to them.
No, bro.
And also I want to thank our tech support too. Couldn't do this without you either. Putting them slides, preparing for this, preparing the interpreters, everything. Thank you so much. Where's Cheyenne at? I want to give her some praise as well. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right, perfect. I want to say again, thank you, Fred, for giving your time to come and have this presentation for us. I know you've been very busy and you took the time to share your stories and your history relating to deaf history. So it was really important that you put that down and show all those different achievements that deaf people have made. and should let us know it's never too late to start, and we can start right now and continue on to the future. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Perfect. Have a wonderful night. Thank you, people who are watching from Facebook. Thank you so much from the CUD family, from the Caribbeans, everybody. I want to say thank you once again and good night. Stay safe. Goodbye.